Hello everyone, this is Darko 2012 for Global Government News. Reading an article titled The Next False Flag, an Attack on the U.S. Embassy in Yemen. And this is a somewhat lengthy article, but I'm going to read it because it is written by Kurt Nimmo. He's a great writer. And the it's pretty relative because this probably will be the next false flag attack. Will be the actual bombing of the U.S. Embassy in Yemen, right? They can bomb ships. They can have guys, from Yemen or on airlines or whatever. But here we go. Earlier today, the Daily Telegraph reported that a truck of explosives and weapons managed to slip past a surveillance operation in Sanaa, Yemen. The revelations came as Western diplomatic missions in Sanaa went into lockdown following threats from al-Qaeda's Yemeni affiliate, which has taken responsibility for a failed attempt to blow up the airliner over Detroit on Christmas Day, the newspaper reported. Yeah, that's what it was. It was Al-Qaeda's Yemeni affiliate. That's the connection that I was getting at. The identity of those who smuggled the weapons contingent into Sanaa has not been disclosed, and it is unclear if its disappearance is linked to al-Qaeda's increasingly powerful Yemeni branch, al-Qaeda in the Arab Peninsula. Diplomats dismiss speculation that the vanishing convoy could presage an imminent attack on Western interests in the city. An attack on Western interests or an embassy or two would play right into the hands of the U.S. and Britain. Gordon Brown has said he will convene a summit of world leaders on the Yemen problem at the end of this month. In the United States, the corporate media continues to beat the war drums and spread absurd hysteria about a supposed al-Qaeda faction in Yemen. We are expected to believe a ragtag gang of terrorists in one of the world's poorest countries pose a threat to freedom-loving Americans the same way sanctions-ravaged Iraq posed a threat after Saddam ganged up with Osama and al-Qaeda, one of the more colorful lies spun by the warmongering and Muslim-hating neocons. Last October, authorities in Yemen busted a terrorist cell accused of attacking the U.S. Embassy the previous month. According to a report filed with the state-run Saba news agency, the group had links to Israeli intelligence. The report, quoting an unnamed source, said investigations and data retrieved from a computer seized from the cell show that there was a correspondence between the Islamic Jihad group's deputy leader Bassam Abdul Fadi al-Haderi and an Israeli intelligence agency, the Indo-Asian News Service said. The Islamic Jihad, reported to have links with the al-Qaeda, have claimed responsibility for the attack on the U.S. Embassy in Sanaa September 17th, which has claimed 18 lives, including that of an Indian woman. Saba quoted the source as saying that the correspondence between the two sides included a request from the Israeli side to implement terrorist attacks inside Yemen. An Israeli Foreign Ministry spokesman said the Yemeni president's statement was without foundations, the BBC reported. To believe that Israel would create Islamist cells in Yemen is really far-fetched. This is yet another victory for the proponents of conspiracy theories, said Igal Palmer. In fact, Israel has had a long and sordid history of false flag attacks. In the 1950s, a series of deadly attacks in Iraq were attributed to Israeli intelligence. 4 years later, Israeli false flag operatives exploded bombs in the British and American cultural centers and libraries in Cairo and blamed it on the Muslim Brotherhood. Following the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel supported and encouraged Sheikh Ahmad Yassin and Hamas in order to counter the influence of secular PLO. Israelis started Hamas. It was a project of Shin Bet, which had a feeling that they could use it to hem in the PLO, said Charles Freeman, a former U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia. A former senior CIA official speaking to UPI described Israelis' support for Hamas as a direct attempt to divide and dilute support for a strong secular PLO by using a competing religious alternative. During the Six-Day War, Israel attacked the USS Liberty and attempted to blame it on Egypt. In the early 1970s, Israel teamed up with Jordan to support Muslim Brotherhood terrorism against Syria. In the 1980s, Israel conducted a bombing campaign in Europe to counter al-Qaeda's nuclear proliferation network, which helped Pakistan build a nuclear weapon. Oded Yunan's paper, A Strategy for Israel in the 1980s, published in the winter of 1982 issue of Kanunim, I'm having trouble pronouncing some of this, so just bear with me, suggested Arab states should be destroyed from within by exploiting their internal religious and ethnic tensions. In September of 2000, India's largest news weekly reported that a Mossad attempt to infiltrate al-Qaeda failed when undercover agents were stopped on their way to Bangladesh by Indian customs officials. A year later, the Army School of Advanced Military Studies in the United States said the following about Israeli intelligence. Wild card, ruthless and cunning, has capability to target U.S. forces and make it look like a Palestinian-Arab act. It goes on and says in 2005, U.S. intelligence officers reported that insurgents in Iraq and Beretta 02 pistols minus serial numbers. Analysts suggest that the lack of serial numbers indicates that the weapons were intended for intelligence operations or terrorist cells with substantial government backing. Analysts speculate that these guns are probably from either Mossad or the CIA. Analysts speculate the agent provocateurs may be using the untraceable weapons even as U.S. authorities use insurgent attacks against civilians as evidence of the illegitimacy of the resistance, the UPI reported. In 2002, officials from the Palestinian Authority accused the Mossad of setting up fake al-Qaeda terrorist cell in Gaza. The then Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat said that Israel had set up the mock cell in order to justify attacks in Palestinian areas, according to the BBC. Not one big success of the Mossad has ever been made public. Ephraim Halevi, head of the Mossad from 1998 to 2002, told 60 Minutes in 2003. The U.S. also had a record of using and planning false flag attacks, most notably Operation Northwoods. Andreas von Bülow, former German Minister for Research and Technology and a longtime member of the German Parliament, said in 2002, the attacks on September 11, 2001 were a false flag attack. Quote, whoever wants to understand the CIA's method has to deal with its main task of covert operations. Below the level of war and outside international law, foreign states are able to be influenced by inciting insurrections or terrorist attacks, usually combined with drugs and weapons trades and money laundering, he told Tagesspiegel. In addition to its long history of covertly overthrowing governments around the world, the CIA plotted false flag attacks in Europe to drive a wedge between Syria and Iran, according to CIA agent Robert Baer. CIA operatives and patsies are legendary, as Webster Tarpley documents in his book, 9/11 Synthetic Terrorism Made in the USA. Tarpley told Russia Today that the failed attack on a U.S. passenger jet traveling from Amsterdam to Detroit was a set-up provocation controlled by the U.S. intelligence. If an embassy or other Western interests are bombed in the next few days in Yemen, a finger should be pointed at the CIA, Mossad, or both, not the ragtag supposed al-Qaeda franchise operating in the country. On January 3rd, the Yemeni Foreign Ministry declared the threat posed by al-Qaeda is exaggerated by the U.S. Finally, it should be noted that al-Qaeda was established by the CIA in Yemen, as CIA contractor Billy Waff admitted in his autobiography. Quote, I worked right there with these al-Qaeda operatives, Waff wrote in the Hunting the Jackal with Tim Keown. So you can see that the al-Qaeda is CIA. I mean, most of the listeners people that are watching this already are privy to that. You know that the idea of the CIA actually being not the actual al-Qaeda, but the al-Qaeda being created by the CIA in order to keep Muslim extremists alive and fervent, to always make sure that there's a threat. So divide and conquer strategy. But that's all I have to say on this. Good article. Let's hope that there's no more false flag attacks. But you know, like I said in my last videos, 2010 is, according to Daryl Salente, trends forecaster, the year of false flag terrorism. So, and we just had some